Hailing back from the days of Meteorot R in 1999, it is the handheld revolver type in a set of two. It is WLD00 Wild Harry, with a kit of rifle, napalm, melt shot, biped legs, and the leg ability of Trigger Happy, which buffs the power of equipped shooting skills for every critical hit landed. Now, as mentioned, Wild Harry is part of a set of two, his twin being the automatic revolver type gun Desperado. Wild Harry, of course, being the handheld pistol of the two. That being said, his kit is a little more diverse and explosive in comparison to his twin, and a lot of people may recognize Wild Harry in particular for his role in the anime and the World Robattle convention as part of the team of Team France with Kamagoemon and Levillain. But all the same, even by himself, Wild Harry can be most certainly very explosive and powerful on the field while in the right hands. Rifle on the head part is a conventional shooting skill that one can never ever go wrong with using. It has very good balance, good stats, and no real drawback to power or penalty while at heat or cool, which means you can use it basically at any time and not have to worry about if it's going to be a skill to punish you for using it on the field. Napalm on the right arm is a gunpowder based skill that is a scattered AoE, meaning it will damage one part normally and then two others at random at about a third damage each, for an additional 1/3 damage to each part it damages, or even chance damaging the same part repeatedly. This, of course, can be negated or cancelled if the enemy is using a shield, or if the enemy has conceal applied to their side, whereas it'll instead funnel all the damage to that one part exclusively. Melt shot on the left arm, and this is the second ever instance of this skill introduced into the game, the first of which was actually on Sigaru, which was back in the first year of Meteorot S's official release as one of the first year 1 event rewards that we have not seen since. But simply explained, Melt Shot simply is a long-range version of shooting basically acid at the opponent and inflicting them with a damage over time effect. That means that as long as the effect is allowed to remain active, it will be progressively eating away at the opponent's HP and making it a lot easier for Wild Harry himself or another ally behind him to come and finish the job and ensure that they go down quickly with little armor or even no armor at all, despite the fact that it cannot break anything on its own. Biped legs means that he'll have pretty solid coverage across most terrains, as bipeds usually have the best all-round coverage with terrain compatibility, and Trigger Happy does fit very nicely with his kit as well and his aesthetic as a gun, essentially. And this basically means that the more crits he scores, the more powerful and the more aggressive he gets on the field, basically fueling his ego and his morale for every time he makes the enemy hurt with the more damage he deals. When it comes to stats across the board too, even as a spotlight model, Wild Harry is pretty solid across the board too, bar a couple stats. In terms of armor, he's packing about 3,400 for the head, about 3,200 in arm, and about 3,750 for the legs, so not too shabby in that across the board with his armor. Can most certainly hold a pretty solid hit decently well without it hurting him or crippling him too quickly. In terms of his base leg stats as well, I'm honestly impressed with the diversity here. He does have a very nice base mobility at 851, and as a spotlight model with biped legs, that's quite impressive. You don't really see that kind of base speed on a spotlight model very often, if at all, so Wild Harry is honestly already off to a very good foot with that, pun intended, in terms of base speed before the fight ever starts or any modifiers come to aid him. An evade of 940 isn't too shabby. He may or may not dodge or graze things based on how he's feeling that day, but he is leaning towards more likely doing it than not based on how high that stat goes relative to terrain matching. A melee resist of 574 is probably going to be one of the really big pain points on him, as it does mean that he will be struggling to hold his own up close and personal, as since he's a long range type, he definitely does not know how to fight when someone gets up close in his space. With a giant gun barrel for a chest, well, he really won't be good at holding his own when someone tries to get up close to him. However, with a shoot resist of nearly 1400, he most certainly comps this back with the ability to hold his own just a little bit better in a gun showdown and a high noon style gunfight for anyone that tries to take pot shots from afar. Plus, Being an entirely non-heavy kit with a heavy limit of 1 on his legs means he will have an additional slot there for anyone that does choose to make use of it. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I still do have to rate Wild Harry a pretty solid 6.5 out of 10, and one could even argue and talk me into a 7 out of 10, given how well his kit can synergize decently well with each other based on how you use it. Starting off by peppering the foe with Melt Shot to get that DOT going, then start peppering him with Napalm for that scatter damage to help just make sure that he can keep everything on the low end in terms of armor, and then finish him off with the Rifle Blow as a killing shot, means he can most certainly hold his own decently well. And Trigger Happy is nice as well, as it means that every crit he scores means he will get progressively more aggressive on the field the longer the fight is allowed to drag on, and the more times he's allowed to revel in the pain of his target. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him also at a 6.5 out of 10 as well for these very same reasons. Very good legs for what he brings to the table, especially as a spotlight model, and between Rifle, Napalm, and Melt Shot, even though he is a pretty niche fighter between a conventional skill, a gunpowder skill, and a DOT skill that really isn't used super often, you can still put them to very good use based on where you choose to use them and how you choose to fit this handheld pistol type in your team.